gang. So this lesson is all going to be about texture. Now we're going to make the same metal texture that we did in a previous lesson. We have a video out there on how to do a grayscale render of a metal texture. What I wanted to do is show you that you can get to the same place with two different techniques. Now grayscale render, I personally prefer because I tend to change my mind a lot. But if you're really committed to making it a certain hue, then this metal texture technique is absolutely applicable to you. Now, on a scale of 1 to 5, this is probably a 3 in terms of complexity, so you need to know a little bit. First of all, you need to know we are in the pixel persona. So if you don't know the difference between vector and pixel persona, you're going to want to look that up. Secondly, I've included my brush pack, metal texture brushes, in the download, so you need to know how to import brushes. Then in swatches, I've included all the swatches that I'm going to use. It's called the Metal Texture Palette, and it's got all the swatches that I'm going to use during this course. So you need to know how to import palettes. So if you know how to import palettes, you know how to import your brushes. I've included 2 example files. Now I'm going to be taking colors from this and textures from this in order to make my unique hodgepodge of this metal texture. My document size is 2000 by 2000. I always work in square textures, and I always work in 2000 pixels so that they're large enough for me to use if I decide to blow them up. So let's go ahead and begin with a pixel layer. So I'm going to be flipping back and forth between my mouse and my pen tablet. So I'll hopefully tell you guys when I'm doing it. You'll probably hear the pen tablet rolling. You can definitely do this with a mouse. Now, where I like to start with, I go to my brushes. I like to start by kind of laying in some base areas. So I'll grab this grunge brush that's in the middle, and then I want to choose a swatch that's kind of in the center. I'm going to go ahead and choose something that might be in this green. I want it to kind of go with a green undertint. So I'm going to go ahead and crank my brush up a little bit, and I'm just going to throw down some base color here. All right. Looking good. Now, let's take a look at where my flow settings are, because this is critical. Flow is down, opacity is up. The difference between these two, and you guys should know this by now, opacity is either fully opaque or not, and the flow is how quickly you get there. So, if my flow is down, I have a long way to go. So, I've laid in some base greens. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to lay in some of these darker browns. Now the trick to this, break up your pattern. If you see a pattern developing in a texture, unless you want it to look like that, you're not fooling anybody. Alright, now I'm going to show you guys a trick. This pixel layer, come over here and change the blend mode. This is what makes the magic work. You're going to go ahead and change it over to color dodge. Now look at how much differently those colors are being applied now. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to saturate some of the rest of this here. There we go. Yep. All right. Looks good. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change brushes now because I got a lot of soft, grungy type textures. Now I want to do something a little bit different. So I come over here to this grunge brush and I turn this up. Now let's see what this does. I don't much like that. Let's go ahead and Control Z that. I want this to be a little bit darker still. I'm still working in my darks. Let's go ahead and try this. There we go. But now we want to crank that opacity down quite a bit on that bad boy. Alright, I really like that. Cool, we're kind of breaking up the pattern a little bit. You can rotate this brush if you really wanted to. Alright, now once we've got that down, I'm going to go ahead now and let's take a look at maybe in this area. Let's go ahead and break down. Let's do the darker tan. And let's break that down now with, yeah. All right, let's use that brush. Now I'm going to go ahead and crank my brush down a little bit. Now what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of breaking in a pattern and I'm trying to make sure that it looks like a concentric type of metal texture there. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead now, come over to the swatches. Let's go ahead and crank in some of this depth here. All right. So I'm going to now turn down the opacity on this because I do not want this to go all the way black. Okay. Let's see what we get in terms of black. Okay, let's go ahead and crank it up just a little bit. All right. Looking good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crank up the opacity on the black because I want some of these to go really, really dark. Okay, there we go. You see how by breaking out the pattern, we're actually getting it to kind of where we want it? Okay, looking good. Looking real good there. Let's go ahead and crank that up even further. And now, let's go ahead and crank this down a little bit. Now I'm going to switch over to my pen here so that I can work on the pressure because I don't want it to be all or nothing. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of grab some of this tan. I'm going to come into my brushes. Let's grab this kind of grayish look here. And let's see what we got for brushes. Now, this brush is one of my favorites here. This one is what's going to give us these nice machining marks. So I'm going to use my pen. You can definitely go ahead and use your mouse. And I'm just brushing in some machining marks. That kind of breaks this thing up and really sets the stage. It kind of gives it that brush mark. Look, that looks really good. Okay, cool. Now let's go ahead and highlight this thing a little bit. We're going to come in and we're coming back to the swatches. And now we're going to go ahead and let's go pretty much just to a straight white. And let's go ahead and add in some white flecks. Because again, nothing is ever perfect. So you're going to want to add in some white. And you see how I'm using the texture brushes to kind of break it up? When we began this journey, I was kind of using an undefined grunge brush. And now I'm using something that's very, very specific to kind of get some different textures in there on top of those brush strokes. Okay. Now, we're going to take a look here. I think I might want to add a little bit more green. Now, I'm using it sparingly, all right? Just bringing in some of that. And now I want to come back in one more shot here with this brush that kind of gives me the machine marks, but I'm going to turn down the opacity substantially, and I'm going to raise up my brush size. Okay. See how tapping that brush size really begins to change the look of this a little bit. All right, now a couple more texture spots and I think we're pretty well done. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to come over here. Yeah, let's go ahead and drop that down now. Let's go ahead and change my brush size a little. All right. You see how I'm adding in just a little bit of texture there. Okay, now I don't know why my Affinity Designer does that when I use the pen, but it does. All right, so now, as the last thing, I'm coming in with my swatches. I'm grabbing my bright white. I'm grabbing my brush that is right here. I'm going to crank this bad boy up just a little bit, and I'm going to just finish tapping in some of those details. And I don't know why my Affinity Designer does that when I use my brush pen, but it does. All right, so that's a little bit about how to create a texture. using Affinity Designer. The reason this is destructive is because with the grayscale, you can change your mind. Here, you can't. You've got a pixel layer. This is the color of your particular texture. All right, folks, hope you learned a little bit. My working file is in there along with all the downloads. Love to see what you did here. If you want to go ahead and post your comments below. All right, if you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want more, subscribe to the channel. And if you really want to take it from zero to hero, check out our course, Affinity Designer, the complete guide to Affinity Designer, listed below. All right, folks, have a good one.